Queen Amber and King Richard are expecting their first royal baby around Christmas. When an ancient treaty between two kingdoms goes missing, there's a threat of a curse on their unborn child. Queen Amber of New York writes about her favorite holiday. It will be her first Christmas as Queen of Aldovia, and it has been a great year. Being royalty has changed her life. She also enjoyed a magical honeymoon with her husband, King Richard. This year, they revised the Aldovia Initiative to fund the tech center and the new hospital. Amber also started learning about Aldovia's history, which is useful during royal state dinners. She loves that the people of Aldovia are embracing her. She knows the next year will be busier with a royal baby on the way. The press has too many questions about the baby's name and gender. Richard and Amber insist they want to be surprised. Amber has included females in Aldovia's line of succession. She hopes to modernize Aldovia culturally, just as it has economically. The baby is due in January, so they're taking time off in 2 days. Their last official task of the year is signing the Centennial Treaty with the Kingdom of Penglia. Queen Helena, Richard's mother, has some thoughts about the baby's name. Amber agrees to consider all the family members' suggestions. Amber's friend, Melissa, surprises her with an early visit for her baby shower. Amber learns that Melissa is dating Richard's cousin, Simon. They all pretend to be happy for the new couple. Amber thinks Melissa should have informed her before coming to stay for Christmas. Amber and Richard don't trust Simon at all. Richard still points out that Simon has behaved well in the last year. Amber knows that it is only because he wants an official position from them. She's worried about Melissa getting hurt. Richard asks her to focus on their baby. Amber goes through her birth plan while Richard tries to make the baby smarter with classical music. He needs to build a crib that seems a lot more complicated than differential calculus. Amber's dad, Rudy, runs a diner in New York. He's very excited about his trip to Aldovia. He jests about Amber's possible marriage to a king of some tropical paradise, so it won't be so cold. His colleague, Gus, will cover the diner when he arrives for the child's birth. Amber eats donuts in secret and asks Richard not to judge her. She is supposed to watch her sugar and doesn't want Dr. Magoro to know about this. It seems pretty harmless. Magoro assures the couple that the baby is healthy. She wants Amber to rest during the pregnancy. The royal family tries very hard to check the ultrasound, but Richard doesn't let them find out the gender. Richard and Amber enjoy a sleigh ride, during which he tries to protect her. She reminds him that she's not a China doll. Amber wants their baby to have a normal life, even if they will be the heir to the kingdom. She has been to public school, played with neighborhood kids, and ridden the subway herself. Richard agrees to find a new definition of normal for the baby with her. He is fine with the child not attending boarding school, but doesn't want any subway rides either. Mrs. Avril asks the king and queen to review their plan before the Penglians visit. Mr. Little takes over the presentation to explain the significance of the Centennial Treaty. It renews an ancient truce between Aldovia and Penglia that dates back to a war 600 years ago. The war for Silk Road trading routes was fought with no end. On Christmas Eve in the early 1400s, Prince Claude of Aldovia and Prince June of Penglia shook hands and ended the conflict. Before midnight, the truce was declared, and they signed a treaty. It honors the peace and friendship between their nations and is ceremonially renewed every 100 years. Amber loves the artistry of the treaty, and Richard brags about it being in their protection for 100 years. After it is signed, the treaty will be under Penglia's watch for another 100 years. If the Penglian royals agree, Amber might be the first queen to sign it. While Aldovia is embracing the 21st century, the Penglians are a little traditional in their ways. Helena asks Amber to be careful not to offend their closest allies. The Penglian Queen Ming is quite strict. Amber is instructed to let Richard formally introduce them. Amber gets nervous because of the silence and welcomes them before Richard can say anything. Richard explains that they're celebrating the famous handclasp 600 years ago. King Tai is glad to meet Richard and introduces Queen Ming as his wife. Ming doesn't like Amber greeting Lin, who is their attaché. Simon seems weirdly excited to see Lin. Tai is very impressed with their decorations. Richard's niece, Princess Emily, is excited about having a tree in every room. When Tom mentions the trees, Emily reminds him they have mistletoe too. Melissa learns that Simon and Lynn know each other from Oxford. Lynn jokes about Simon being the carefree one. Mr. Zabala brings drinks for Ming and Amber, who try to be polite to each other. Ming notes how well Amber has fit into her new role. She comments on how it is now fashionable for royals to marry outside noble classes. She still congratulates Amber on her first child. Amber thinks of the baby as family and not her duty. She asks Ming about her 3 children, Harry, Vivian, and Amanda. Simon looks very interested when Lin talks to him. He insists he's very close to getting an actual title. Melissa seems uncomfortable with their closeness, but Lin soon gets distracted by a call. Ming is familiar with Aldovia's modernization, which Amber spearheaded. Ming still doesn't feel a need to modernize a 600-year-old tradition by adding the Queen's signatures. Mr. Little interrupts them to announce the arrival of the event planners. Amber is too excited to see Andy and Sahil. They plan to throw a fantastic royal baby shower for Amber. Sahil also offers to improve the treaty to make it less tacky. Amber reminds him that it's a priceless work of art. Sahil doesn't look too convinced. Amber gets back to her birth plan at night and starts quizzing Richard. He's busy trying to test a device for the baby. He takes it to the nursery to check the sounds but hears Amber moaning in pain. Amber can't reach her slippers, so Richard helps her out. Someone enters the room where the treaty is kept during the night storm. Lin is worried because all the flights have been cancelled due to the storm. Ming and Tai want to proceed with the signing while Lin figures out their travel arrangements. Ming is very anxious and eager to get back to her kids. Amber and Richard are informed that the Penglians don't want either queen to sign the treaty. Richard assures Amber that they can focus on the baby once all the formalities are over. Helena addresses the attendees when Tai and Ming join them. She feels honored to preside over the 7th signing of the sacred truce. She asks Mr. Little to open the box, but the treaty is missing. Amber tries to assure the Penglians that they will figure this out. The staff assures the royals that the treaty was in the box last night. Helena feels terrible they didn't update the security protocols as she had planned. No one has entered or left since the blizzard, so the treaty and the thief should be inside the palace. Richard and Amber ask Simon to distract Lin and the Penglians while they handle the situation. Amber also urges Emily to watch Simon so he doesn't misbehave. Simon asks the Penglians to play Top of the Tree, a classic Aldovian Christmas game. Tai remembers it from his childhood. Simon explains that 2 teams compete to place the star on the top of the tree. Ming is worried Simon wants them to play a children's game during a scandal. Melissa and Lin praise his talents and reassure her, so Simon starts explaining the rules. The right answers about royal traditions and legends will earn them ornaments in the game. While Tai is excited to play, Ming wants to inform her children about the delay. Melissa decides to sit out since she doesn't know much about royals. Emily offers to join King Tai, leaving Lin to pair up with Simon. You can see the regret on Melissa's face. Amber suggests making a list of suspects, since it's the first rule of investigative journalism. She noticed a look Simon and Lin exchanged when the treaty went missing. She also heard Sahil calling the treaty tacky, and feels like they all have motives. Richard tries to joke about it by assuring her that at least they both didn't do it. Lin wins the next round and celebrates with Simon. Melissa feels uncomfortable when Simon keeps praising her. Lin offers to make an instrument for Melissa too, but she steps out for some air. Simon notices something is wrong and follows her. Tai also feels like he should check on Ming. Mr. Little remembers enjoying the game as a child. He asks Emily a made-up question about the greatest king. She knows he's talking about her late father. He places the star on the top to make her win. Melissa and Simon are heading out for a walk in the snow. Simon thinks Emily can handle the Penglians, while he makes Melissa his priority. Amber asks to speak to Melissa in private. She admits she didn't realize Melissa and Simon were so close. Melissa admits that she feels Simon is very smart and misunderstood. Amber reminds Melissa that a lot of bad boys have broken her heart. It seems like a pattern. Melissa still believes Simon is different because he cares about her. Amber worries about his intentions and asks if she has noticed his connection with Lin. Melissa believes Simon when he claims Lin is just a friend. She gets insecure sometimes but thinks she knows Simon very well. She's sure they are in love and wants this to work. The staff has been unable to find the treaty after their initial survey. They still assure Helena they won't rest until it's found. Helena reminds them that both nations will return to a state of war if it's not signed by Christmas Eve. Emily comes by and shows interest in a book Helena is reading. Emily reads the part about a curse on the firstborn if the treaty is not upheld. Helena explains that in earlier times, a sorceress conjured a spell to ensure both kingdoms upheld the treaty. Emily is worried about a curse on Amber's baby. Helena asks her daughter not to take sorcery seriously in this century. Amber is worried about her chat with Melissa. Richard keeps wanting her to rest, but Amber is determined to be the great investigative journalist she is. Richard comes by Sahil's room to ask him about a design question for the nursery. Sahil gets excited with his tips, which gives Amber a chance to sneak into his room. She finds a lot of drawings and some props for the baby shower. Andy also knocks on Sahil's door and is surprised to see Amber there. She admits she's searching the room because she's suspicious of Sahil. Andy reminds her that he works with Sahil daily. He knows Sahil can be opinionated, but would never risk their multi-million-dollar business. He asks Amber to write a puff piece on them instead of sleuthing. Amber is sure Sahil didn't take the treaty and decides to stop searching. Emily warns Amber about the curse that could ruin them. Richard doesn't believe in such curses, but Amber doesn't want to take any chances. She is determined to get to the bottom of this mystery at any cost. All the flights to Aldovia are still cancelled, and Rudy doesn't know when he can fly out. Amber shares her concerns about Melissa with him. She's also worried about the baby shower and the treaty. She informs him about the curse on Christmas Eve. Rudy doesn't believe in the supernatural stuff. He still asks Amber to take it easy on Melissa. He also doesn't think Amber should cancel the baby shower just because people can't come into the castle. He is aware that there are plenty of people inside. He also suggests that the palace needs hope in this time of crisis. Amber dreams about Emily's words and wakes Richard up in panic. They read about a royal scandal of the fathers of the Silk Road Treaty in the history book. There was apparently a love triangle between Prince Claude and June over Claude's wife, Princess Jocelyn. After the treaty was signed, Claude was poisoned. Everyone believed June did, and the House of Devon, Claude's family, fell out of power. Amber seems very familiar with Devon's name, but Richard is fast asleep before she can ask him about it. Helena knows that Amber cannot sleep well. She understands that nothing will be the same after the baby is born. Amber misses her mother a lot at this time, so she could ask some questions. Helena assures Amber that her mother's spirit is always with her and the baby. Helena is sure she will guide Amber in some way. Amber is grateful for Helena and hugs her. Dr. Magoro claims that fear causes a lot of tension in the body. She wants Amber and Richard to use the power of language to soothe themselves. She asks them to have a positive view of birth and think of contractions as power surges flowing through the body. She wants Amber to think of contractions as a wave of relaxation and pleasure. That will surely work when the time comes. She asks them to lie down so she can help them with guided imagery meditation. While Richard seems relaxed, Amber is still worried. Ming asks her children to be patient and not open their presents yet. Tai asks Ming to enjoy Christmas in Aldovia, even if she's missing her kids. He reminds her that the kingdoms will return to a state of war if they don't sign a treaty. Lin suggests that the Aldovians planned this distraction on purpose. Tai doesn't believe that since both the kingdoms have been eager to maintain peace. Lin thinks this could be a way for the Aldovians to renegotiate terms unfairly. They're interrupted by Mr. Zabala's invitation for them to Amber's royal baby shower that day. Amber is excited to see the preparations and feels that Sahil has outdone himself. Helena asks them to celebrate new life and strong bonds at the party. They begin with a baby guessing game and point out their pictures. Amber feels overwhelmed with all the presents everyone gave her. Ming gifts her something she made for her that very day. Tai gifts them a song and starts playing the piano. As Amber praises his talent, Ming also feels he's the leader Penglia needs. Amber opines that Ming is equally important and deserves more credit. Tai and Richard like that their queens are getting along. Richard asks him to slip out for a minute. Lin asks for an update about the missing treaty from Avril and Little. They inform her that it's still in the palace and that a police dog will arrive the next morning to sniff it out. Richard shows Tai the crib he's planning to build. Tai remembers that it took him a month to build one for his first child. He decides to help Richard and asks him to follow his instincts. Tai admits that fatherhood came automatically to him after the birth of his first child. He has never experienced that kind of love before and feels fulfilled. Emily read that the treaty had disappeared 200 years ago. The thief was caught red-handed and spent the rest of his life in the dungeons in Aldovia. Helena and the others ask her not to believe this legend. Little believes her because he started working for Emily's grandparents when he was a kid. They told him that the ghost of the thief still roamed in the dungeons. One Christmas Eve, he sneaked into the dungeons. He heard a tortured moaning and a chilling breeze. While Amber is excited about the gifts, Melissa notices Simon following Lin somewhere. Richard apologizes to Tai for all the problems the treaty caused. Tai is supportive of Ming singing the treaty too, but knows that she's worried about what the people of Penglia will think. Richard reminds him that Aldovians love Queen Amber, and Queen Ming deserves her due too. They're proud of the crib they built until it is dismantled again. It's no rocket science. Melissa watches Simon and Lin discussing something on a laptop. Simon feels they deserve what's coming for them. He ruffles up a piece of paper and asks Lin to follow him somewhere. Melissa picks up the paper and watches Lin leave Simon's room. She confronts him and asks what he's hiding. He assures her Lin is just a friend. He then clarifies that they went on 3 dates at school, but realized they were better as friends. That is surely believable. Melissa feels stupid and thinks Amber was right about him. Richard gifts Amber some baby sneakers as an early Christmas gift. Melissa admits Amber was right about Simon and Lynn working together. She shows them the paper with the financial information of the trade agreement. It mentions Aldovia's debt to Penglia, which is currently €1 billion. It was $5 billion a year ago and can end soon because their economy is doing well. Amber knows if the treaty is broken, this debt will be due immediately. They realize that Simon is probably helping Lynn in selling out his kingdom for some money. Richard wants to make a formal accusation, and Melissa wants to help. Richard still asks them to wait till Malinois, the police dog, sniffs out the treaty. He can't risk offending the Penglians till he has some proper proof. Amber asks Melissa to keep an eye on Simon so he doesn't suspect anything. Melissa is uncomfortable about lying, so Amber begs her to do it for the baby's future. She explains everything to Melissa. Simon is rehearsing what he will say to Melissa about how things work in the palace. Melissa assures Simon they are fine when she comes back to the room. On Christmas Eve morning, the police dog arrives and starts taking rounds. Since Aldovia's weather has improved, Lynn is preparing their departure at the first clearing. Richard asks Amber to have faith that the dog will find the treaty. Helena insists everyone should remain outside till the dog sniffs out the treaty. She suggests heading to the Christmas market. As they walk down the market, Amber hopes for a Christmas Eve miracle. All the locals get excited about Amber and come to greet her. Ming notices how much people love Amber. Tai insists Ming should get credit for her work in Penglia too. Amber is tempted by ice skating but can't do it because of her pregnancy. Richard arranges for a chair to glide with her, and Amelia joins with Tom too. Even Tai feels excited and joins them on the ice. When Simon falls, Lynn assures Melissa that he's tougher than he looks. Emily feels like a ballerina in the snow, and Tom kisses her. Amber feels all of this made her forget their worries for a second. Ming refuses to ice skate but agrees to participate in archery. She challenges someone, so Helena projects Amber as their champion archer. Amber is worried about her chances, but everyone encourages her. Ming throws an impressive shot first, leaving Amber to fill big shoes. As she tries to breathe, Mr. Little informs them that the dog failed to find the treaty. Amber hits the bullseye and faints. Richard carefully brings her to the palace. Dr. Magoro feels she must have overexerted and suggests that she needs rest. She decides to drive to the palace to check on Amber. Amber is worried about it being midnight soon and doesn't care about rest. When Lynn hears the airport is reopening, she asks Little to make their travel arrangements. Melissa overhears this and informs Amber and the others that the Penglians are leaving. Helena decides to speak to them with Mr. Zabala to stop them. Richard feels like it's time for them to expose Simon and Lynn. They inform Emily that Simon has been conspiring with Lynn since he arrived. Amber's instincts confuse her since she doesn't understand how the police dog didn't find Simon and Lynn's hidden treaty. The old scandal between Claude and Jun is also troubling her because the family swore to get revenge. She's surprised to learn from Emily that somebody almost stole the treaty 200 years ago. Amber starts getting contractions and knows she's going into labor. Magoro seems confused since Amber is not due until January, but she also feels it could be forced labor due to overactivity. She assures Richard that she'll be there soon, but her car crashes into the snow. Ming comes to check on Amber and asks about her contractions. Magoro calls Richard to inform him about her situation. He learns that she's stuck in the snowbank and asks her to wait for him. Ming offers help when Richard decides to find Magoro. Ming has some experience since she volunteered at a maternity ward. She asks Tai to tell Lynn to cancel their flight. Richard assures Amber he will be back for her as soon as possible. Simon seems worried about Amber, but Richard shouts at him on the way out. Ming informs Amber that her son also came early. He is competent and intelligent, and she's sure Amber's baby is strong too. Amber is still worried that her baby will be cursed if the treaty isn't signed. Helena scolds Emily for worrying Amber with such stories. Emily is still concerned it might be true. Ming asks to hear this story, even though she believes sorcery was discredited a long time ago. Ming is not too worried about this curse, but understands that Amber doesn't want to take chances. Avril brings some pain medications for Amber, but she wants her mind to stay sharp. Helena also doesn't want Amber to worry, but Emily feels something might be at play. She informs them about the haunted dungeon and how Little even encountered the thief. Amber gets an idea and asks Emily to go to the furthest corner of the dungeon. Helena decides to accompany her since she's not scared of any ghosts. She assures Emily that the noises are just part of her imagination. They reach the furthest corner and find a note that claims Leopold was there. The door magically locks them inside, and they shout for help. Richard finds Magoro and asks her to ride with him. Simon is worried about Amber, but Avril doesn't let him in. Simon still gives Amber his stress ball, which helps him relax. Ming asks Zabala for a heating pad and a paint roller to help Amber. Avril has a heating pad, but Zabala doesn't know where to find a roller. Andy offers help, but Sahil is the one who has a paint roller in his room randomly. He refuses to tell Andy what it's for. Emily shouts for help, but no one can hear them in the dungeon. They spot a key that is too far out of their reach. Ming admits that she worked at a hospital for many years. Penglia is also now offering services to support mothers in any way. Amber has heard about the program and is trying to implement something similar in Aldovia. Emily tries to reach the key with her walking stick but falls on a stone. They find the missing treaty inside, but Emily feels the ghost is coming to get it. Helena assures her the noise is just from the wind blowing through the stones. Megoro arrives at the palace and takes over Amber's care. It's almost midnight, and Helena realizes she can use her hairpin to open the lock. With 10 minutes to midnight, Emily and Helena bring the treaty to Amber. They inform everyone about the treaty in the dungeon and how Amber solved the mystery. Amber informs them all about the scandal that resulted in Prince Claude's poisoning. His family swore vengeance, and a member is in that room. She remembers that Claude's name Devon sounded familiar to her because she read about it in her family history book. She asks Little if his mother's maiden name was Devon, and knows he did it. Amber also knows he was the last to lock up the treaty and keep the dog out of the dungeon. He also tried to keep Emily out by telling her ghost stories. Little admits that he stole the treaty to sever their ties with Penglia. He is bound by a sworn duty to avenge the crimes against his family by the Penglian prince June. Ming reminds him that June's guilt was never proven, and it was most probably a covetous feudal lord. Little still insists he was doing his duty. Helena asks Zabala to banish Little to the Leopold suite. Richard apologizes to Simon for assuming he did it. Simon clarifies that he has been working with Lynn on economic amendments to benefit both kingdoms. Melissa doesn't believe him because he was hiding something when she went to the room the other day. Simon explains that Lynn was helping with a gift and asks Melissa to marry him. They all celebrate, and Richard gives Simon the title of a duke. Amber reminds them that it's almost midnight. Ming agrees to let the queens also sign it this time. When all four of them sign the treaty, Avril stamps the seal just seconds before midnight. They all celebrate the success, but it's time for Amber to deliver her baby. Megoro brings a healthy daughter to them, who will be the future monarch. Richard informs the family about the good news, and they all celebrate the baby girl. Rudy gets excited about his granddaughter and is glad he flew in just in time. Amber introduces him to Alary, who has been named after her mother. Amber asks Ming to be with her family on Christmas. Ming invites Amber to their kingdom so they can discuss the mother's program in person. Ming also gifts Amber a Penglian symbol of a mother's nurturing strength. Princess Alary's birth is soon announced, and all the locals are overjoyed.